Right then guys, so I really don't know where to start with this case, and we're probably going to have a lot of chopping and changing with the you know, where the camera is and everything like that. But the first thing I've got to talk about with this case is its size, because it's massive. If I stand up next to it, you can see that it goes from down below my hip area, kind of like, I suppose you could say, sort of like even below, like where my bum cheeks are. And it comes up to near enough level with my shoulders. It's enormous. Now I've got it on a flat surface, but I've got it on this fleece just so I can spin it round more. But height wise, I'd say that's a good 690 millimeters there. Let's go up here. Highest point is about 695 millimeters. It's actually taller than my desk. So 69.5 centimeters. Width wise, what I'll do is I'll go from the side of the widest part of the case first, and that is, I'd say, about 300 millimeters. And the bars, you're probably looking at about 310 for the widest point of the bars. That's the width. And then the length from the longest point is probably 650 millimeters. It is an absolute monster. Now, as I said, there is going to be a lot of bringing the camera in, bringing the camera out, having a look at this, having a look at that. I'm going to try and do my best to kind of help the review flow, but there is an immense amount to cover with this. This isn't going to be a 5-minute review. And I want to take my time with it so that we actually do this justice, because this is, I don't want to say too much because I've already got things going around in my head I want to say in the conclusion. What I'm going to do now is we're going to try and structure this as we do with all the other reviews, and I'm going to bring the camera in and we'll start with the front and try and work our way around everything. Right then peeps, front of the case. Now I know you can't see all of the case, you know, it goes right the way down. But you've got this meshed kind of intake area here, and I'll get to what's behind the intake area when we get inside the case. We've got this shield area at the front with the Cooler Master badge on it. Now the top of the shield area has got a couple of magnets on it. I'm just going to turn the camera around so I can see what I'm showing you. It's got a few magnets in the top here, so that when you pull and release it, the magnets are what's, and there we go, right, I wanted to do that slowly because if you watch that go down, it's got a really kind of smooth quality feel to it. Now I've worked with cases like this in the past, so once you unlatch the magnets, they just drop, or you've got to manually push them down yourself. This has got such a slick quality feel to it that it actually glows down, and it goes at the same speed every time. It's so nice. It might seem like a really kind of basic thing, but I love it. Now we have 3 optical bays at the top available, plenty, do you know what I mean? Some of you out there are going to have a couple of opticals and maybe a fan controller or something, or maybe even a double bay water cooling reservoir and an optical bay. It's going to be plenty. But also in the front, I mean, you just unclip the optical bays, you get your finger in there and unclip it, and then that's it, and that's the cover. It's just as simple to put them back in as well. But matching kind of style is this hot swap bay. Now the hot swap bay has also got keys, so you can lock them in place, so you can get external access to your hard drive should you need it. And the fact that it's lockable means you've got a bit of security there, possibly for LANs, or if you end up using it as some monster kind of workstation PC. But again, you can just cover it up. And there we go. And as we're at the front, what I'm also going to talk about is the I/O area here. Now we have an eSATA, headphone and microphone, 2 USB 3s, and inside that is an internal header as well. And then you've also got 4 USB 2s, all in the front area of the case. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition the camera again, and I will show you well, we'll start to show you what's on the roof. Right then guys, also on the roof you can see we've got the Cosmos logo here on this panel, and this panel actually slides up to expose the power switch. Now you've got the power switch in the middle here, which is this large button. Now it's kind of a textured kind of aluminium feel, but there's also buttons around the outside. Now you've got a reset button here, and a button here that also controls any LEDs that you've got in the case. They have to be the fans and LEDs that have got the extra 2-pin connector, as you get with some of the Cooler Master fans, but I'll show you that in a minute. But any of those kind of fans that are supported, you can turn them all on and off with one button from the top. But also, you can see we have front, top, HDD and GPU. Now inside, there are 4 separate sets of fan cables, all kind of labelled up like this as well, because this is a fan controller. And I will show you it powered on, but basically when you first start the case up, from the start anyway, the front, top, hard drive and GPU, they will all light up blue. If you press the button once, it goes like a purpley colour. Press the button again, it goes like a red colour, and it's 3-stage fan control. So you can have a look at here and you can see what each section of your fans is doing. Blue is low, the purpley colour is medium, and the red is on high. And it actually works really well, to the point that I had the GPU set up for the D14 and the front fans and everything, and the top fans all set up separately, all running at different times, and you can literally have them all doing different things. And this is a really nice touch, the fact that it is just quite easy, click, and you can change the fan speeds. Also the fact that you get the little light to show you how quick things are going or what state they're running at, because then also it's quite quick to have a look and you know exactly what's going on. Also at the front you've got a hard drive activity light and a power light as well. But this front area, and the fact it can be covered up as well, I really like, because you could just turn your rig on, you know what you're going to want your fans at, you're going to want them all quiet, so you have them all on blue, cover it back up, job done. This is a really nice touch, really nice touch. One thing I will say though, is if you haven't got enough connectors inside, all you need to do is use fan splitter cables, and you can run extra ones off of one unit. One thing I did think that they could have done differently is you've got top, front, hard drive and GPU. Well, there's nowhere directly inside, like at the side, for GPU fans or anything. There's nowhere on the doors that you could mount it. So I think maybe the GPU might have been better to have had that set as like a CPU fan instead, because we're more likely to want to change the fans on our CPU than like an aftermarket GPU. And like I said, where there's also nowhere to mount any GPU side flow fans, I think that might have been better as CPU. But that's just me trying to be picky, because this case is such a behemoth and it is designed really well. I still want to try and bring to you any changes or anything that I think could have made it that little bit better. Now I'm just going to move the case again and show you something else. Right then peeps, we're still dealing with the top, but we're at the back of the case. Now underneath here there is a thumb screw that I've already removed, but basically when you remove that thumb screw, it allows you the ability to remove the top panel. It's very simple, just pull it back a little bit and release it, and it reveals quite an enormous area on the inside. Now if you have a look, there is quite a lot of room in that top panel. Now I have looked, I wouldn't suggest that you put a radiator or anything up here, but there is plenty of room to be able to fit your fans in the top, so that you can have your fans in the top and the radiator underneath, should you wish. And if I just get I'll get the tape measure out for you, I'll measure how much room we have got at the top. There is a total of about 40 millimeters, 35 to 40 millimeters total in spare there. So I would say personally that's right for a set of fans, and then still enough room for them to be able to move. On the underside of the roof you can see that there is some sort of dust filtering mesh, but that would be if you were using it as an intake. I'm more a person to use the roof fans as an exhaust more than anything, because obviously heat rises. but it all works rather lovely. I've got, there you go, see it's in already. All you've then got to do is thumb screw it up. Dead easy to remove. It comes with 120mm in the roof already, but you can fit 3 120mm should you wish, or 3 140mm fans in the roof. And also the 120mm spacings are perfect for a 360mm radiator, or up to a 300mm radiator I should say. And you can also see that you can get right underneath there with the last fan, and this is one of the reasons why I say this really isn't good enough for radiator actually above, because you're going to need that slightly bit of extra room for, because the front fan will be underneath this panel, and it's just so that you can still manage to get all the air out and flowing. But otherwise, you know, a set of fans above, the radiator below would be absolutely perfect. And also what you need to consider is if you have the fans above, you're also going to get some of the light coming out the top of your case, which will, you know, send those little kind of sparkly diamonds and stuff from the mesh up to your ceiling and light your room up. If you don't like that, then obviously you're not going to have LED fans anyway, but those of you out there that do like it will like that idea. What I'm going to do now is break off again and we'll have a look at the back of the case. Right then, moving on to the back of the case. Straight away, you can see here we've got a 140mm fan that comes fitted. It's just like a smoked blade, black blade, standard Cooler Master 140mm fan, but you can fit a 120mm fan should you wish. There's also 3 water cooling grommets at the top. I've not got the back plate in for the motherboard, but we've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 PCI Express slots in total. So this will be able to fit even the you know, the massive motherboards like the G1 Assassin and everything like that. There's also an extra PCI slot on the slide should you use that for any like expansion like USB slots or anything like that. If I just move the camera down slightly, just quickly for you, you can see at the bottom that the power supply is stuck out slightly, and that's basically, there's 4 screws on this black panel that you can unscrew and remove the power supply from the back of the case should you wish to help installation. It also gives you a bit more room for what's inside, which I'll show you in a bit. I'm just going to bring you back up again now, move the camera back up. Now what I want to show you is just here, and just here there are 2 buttons, and when you push the button down, it then releases the door, and the doors are hinged, as you can see. But also something that I really like with this, I'm going to move the case slightly so I can show you this properly, because this really does need showing off. If I get all the cables, not cables, all the fleece and everything that way, I'm going to move the case slightly and I'm going to show you these doors again, but from a little bit more distance. Right then peeps, so I've moved the camera again and we've moved the case a little bit. Now like I said to you before, you push the button at the back and that releases the door. You can see the door starting to swing now already. And basically you just push the door and it's on a hinge. Now something that's also quite good is I'm going to slide the case back a little bit so that you can see this a bit better. Yes, they're on hinges, but straight away I instantly thought, oh my god, if you've got to open the door every time to work on your case, you're going to need so much room. Because obviously side panels normally just kind of come off. But if I put it round here and show you something, the door comes right off the hinges. And then you can just get at your case as you would do normally. Now it is actually pretty simple to be able to put the door back on, because on the side of the door, if you see, there are these little latches at the top and at the bottom. You've got the latches, and basically all you have to do, with me getting in the way, it's pretty difficult for me to be able to do this while trying to record at the same time, is just slide the door back on and then that's it, you're done. I don't know what it's caught on. I've not put it in properly. There you go, it's on now. And that's it, side panel on. It's quite easy to take it off again, and this is on both sides as well. So you can take the side panel and the back panel off really easily. But while we've got the side panel off, what I'm going to do is reposition the camera again, reposition the case as well, and then I'll get all the lights set up so we can have a good look inside the case. Right then, guys and girlies, you may remember me earlier saying that on the side panel you had a section of grills here for the lower section and a section of grills here for the upper section. Well, that is because inside the case there is 2 levels here. One thing I will say though is on the back of the case there is a set of mounts here should you want to fit some intake fans. These are what you could say were the GPU fans for the fan controller. You have to remove the side panel to be able to screw them in and everything. I think this is a little bit difficult, but obviously those of you out there that want to put some extra airflow directly onto the your graphics cards will be perfect. One thing that you do need to remember is when you do this, you're going to have cables trailing across the inside of your case, and it'll be quite difficult when you start opening doors and the like. But the option is there should you want to use it. I'm just personally not a fan of these, but it is there for any of you out there that want to do it. Also, while we're on the subject of the side panels, they've got handles in the top for you to be able to mount them back on the side nice and easy. Now, first things first, fans in the lower area of the case. They come out on a hinge as well. There's 220mm fans there. These are what would be the hard drive fans on the top of the case. And they are easily removable as well because you literally just slide them out. They've got like an open hinge at the bottom and then a closed hinge at the top. So you locate the top hinge, slide it into the open lower hinge, and then that's it, they click in. They're just as easy to remove as they are to install. Absolute doddle these, brilliant idea for those of you out there that like some active hard drive cooling. Now, hard drives in total, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the top, and then we have a further 6 in the bottom, so 11 3.5-inch hard drive total that we can fit on there. Now these hard drive bays, they're screwed in at the back, and you've only got to take away 2 screws on either side, but once you have, these hard drive bays are removable as well. And I'll show you why this is significant in a little bit, because like I said, there's so much to try and cram in with this case, it's unreal. But both of them are removable. In fact, I'll remove them now. They're toolless as well, the hard drive cages themselves. I'll take one out. You can basically just clip your hard drive into place, and also below you'll see that there are 4 screws, and that is so that you can screw solid state drives in them as well. So each one of these can hold a solid state drive and a 3.5-inch drive. Continuing on with hard drives, you've got the 5 in the top, but should you not want to use them, this side panel here, so you can take all the hard drives out. In fact, I'll do it, I can't because it's plugged in. But this side panel you can remove. I'm not sure that you're ever going to get a graphics card that's going to be that big, but the option is there. There's also a 180mm fan in the front, feeding the main chamber for an intake. You can see here that the 3 optical bays that we spoke about before, they're toolless, so you've got the option of with just a simple click being able to insert and remove your optical bays. But I'm starting to get lost now, guys. You can see that it's mammoth inside. There is so much room in here, it's unreal. I think now what I'm going to have to do is bring the camera in, give you a good look of what's going on inside, explain a few more bits, and then we'll move around to the back. But honestly, I've not even touched the surface of the amount that you can do with this yet. Right then, peeps, I'm trying to keep out of the light of the cameras as best I possibly can, because you wouldn't believe how hard it is to try and get the camera and the lights playing nice so that you can see the details on the black. But anyway, you can see that we've got 2 grommets here at the bottom of the case. Now all the grommets in the case are pretty bomb-proof. You can stick your hands and your cables through and they don't disappear. Now these would be, maybe some of you would think, oh, I want them to go through, but should you have multiple graphics cards in, these may be handy if your cables aren't long enough. Obviously you've still got a full bank of grommets down the side. Now I'm just going to swap sides so that I can point better. What you can see is I've put a normal ATX board in, which just comes to the edge. But the reason why that the grommets are sat ever so slightly further out is for if you run something like the Rampage 4 Extreme, the Rampage 3 Extreme, they're slightly wider. And basically what this means is that even with that extra width, you're going to be able to get your cables in and they'll fit perfectly fine and they won't be tight. So that's why the grommets are slightly further out. You may not look at that when you may not look at the case and realise that straight from the get-go, but when you've kind of been building things as long as I have, that extra bit of width for a larger board is brilliant. But obviously with a slightly narrower board, it doesn't really make a lot of difference, so it's not any kind of negative. Now we've got one lot of grommets right the way down, but many of you may be thinking to, well, what's the point in having this big lot of extra grommets down this side? Well, basically this bar, if you look, goes right the way up. It's also got some screw mounts for motherboard standoffs. Basically what those mounts would be for is if you had an SR2 or the upcoming, if they do actually build it, SR3, you know, the double CPU socket EVGA motherboards, this case already supports it. But not only does it support it, it supports it with the grommets. So it's even, do you know what I mean, there's only really one board out on the market at the moment that you'd want to use it with, but for future use, this case is absolutely perfect for those, you know, upcoming sockets, or those upcoming boards, I should say. So it is quite a testament to them that, you know what I mean, they're already kind of planning this, and also the fact that we've got all the PCI Express slots aside and everything like that just goes to show you, you know, how much thought has gone into this case. And you can see, I mean, that's just a normal ATX board and it's practically dwarfed in this case. It's just completely unreal. Now what I am going to do is measure for you. You've got about 50 millimeters between the roof and the top of the motherboard. I wish that was about 10 mil taller, because basically what that means is if you put the fans above, the maximum radiator size that you can put on the inside is a 50 millimeter radiator. Now there are some very good 360 and 240 rads at that kind of thickness, but considering this case is so big already, being able to have it that extra 10 mil taller would mean that you'd be able to get a full size 360 radiator in the top. Some motherboards you won't have too much of a problem with it, but as with the UD7 that we're using, it's got a MOSFET heatsink at the top, and you wouldn't be able to use this board with a 60mm thick rad. There are quite a few slightly thinner radiators out there, 35mm, 40mm, 50mm. So if you want to put a 360 in the roof, you are just going to have to think pretty carefully about it, and I would also suggest that you put your fans in the roof as well. One thing that I will say is because of the radiator thickness restrictions, it does kind of mean that a radiator in the roof with push-pull really isn't going to be advisable, because you'd have to use a really thin radiator. You're better off with a thicker radiator and a single set of fans than a skinny rad with double sets of fans. So just keep that in mind as well. We're going to cover some water cooling a bit more in a minute. I need to get round to the other side of the case to talk about that a little bit more, because there's even more to kind of go over. But yeah, I think now I best stop again, move the case around, and we'll have a look at something else. Right then peeps, round to the back of the case. Now what I will say is I've not tried to make it specifically tidy, but the main mess really comes from these black cables and this set of cables here, and these are the fan controller cables. So you basically connect all your fans into these, and they're already wired, cabled as well, so they say GPU fan, HDD fan, top fan, etc, to coincide with the fan controller on the front. The black cables was what I was telling you about before, where if you've got any fans that support these two pin connectors, a lot of the Cooler Master cases have got these so that you can disable the fan LED and turn them off. Well, all of the fans, should you want to wire them all up, or buy fans that have got these connectors on them, you can turn the whole case load of like LEDs on and off as well, and there's enough of these cables to match the fans connectors that you can have connected for the fan controller as well. As far as space behind the motherboard is concerned for cables, there is, strictly speaking, about 25 millimeters, which is absolutely loads, but obviously you're going to get a little bit more as well because the door's slightly bowed in its design anyway. There's acres of room for cables in the back. I've not tried to keep this tidy at all. I've just kind of whopped everything in, and to be perfectly honest with you, if you were to clip it all up, it would all look really tidy, but let's face it, most of you don't anyway. One thing I will say is that the case does come with an 8-pin extender cable, because some power supplies won't be able to reach right the way up and over, and it was tight with mine, but I use this just to show you. Now, one thing I would say is it's great that it comes with a cable extender, but should you be wanting to build your own rig in this and you're worried that your power supply might not be big enough, or like me, you like to run your power supply with the fan side up, I would kind of add to your shopping list when you buy the case a braided extension cable as well, because I really wouldn't want to see the black and yellow cables on the inside of your case. You could say that they could have sent you one with it, but let's face it, you know, many of you might be using extension cables anyway, but if you're not, I would say, you know, just buy one. For that extra 10 quid, I'd get one of these. Like I said, I could bitch and moan about the fact I think Cooler Master should have sent one, but, you know, it's not like everyone's going to need one, so I don't see why they should have done. So there's loads of room around the back. We've already seen the grommets down the side that I spoke of, and the grommets in the bottom of the separating panel, but there's also a large cutout at the top here and another one here, so you can get your cables down from the in the roof, and you can also get your 8-pin up with ease. You can also see, if I kind of move it out of the way, that the CPU cutout is absolutely enormous. With a single socket board, or like most normal ATX boards, you're not going to run into any problems getting a CPU heatsink backplate on or off, or your water cooling backplate on or off either. Absolutely momentous amounts of room there. Again, I'm going to rejig the camera and show you something else. Right then peeps, I'm going to try and keep the cables out of the way so that you can see. This is the back view where the hard drive cages would screw into, here, here, here and here. Now, this panel here can be removed, and it's just 6 screws from the bottom of the case. So you tip the case on its side, whiz the 6 screws out, and this whole panel area comes out. Now, you may be wondering, why would you want to do that? Well, basically, because Cooler Master have thought enough ahead that they send these brackets out with the case. And what these do is these go in here and they screw in place. And basically, you have one at the top, and then there's a second one that goes in at the bottom once that panel's removed. And what these do is these allow you to fit a 240mm radiator in the bottom as well. So basically, what you can do is have a 240 in the bottom and a 360mm radiator in the roof. So technically, that's a dual radiator config. Whether you end up running that as dual loops or whether you just have a single loop with 2 radiators in it, it's all perfectly possible. Now, if while we're talking about this, I'm going to try and spin the case around. And I'll change the camera quickly. Oh, I don't need to, it's not too bad. So if we've got this area here gone, hang on, if I move the light a bit more, can we see? Yeah, we'll say we can. So if this area here is gone, and you've got a fairly beefy radiator in there with, let's say, 1 set of fans, you may just about be able to get a pump in the bottom. That would technically be possible. But with these water cooling grommets, what it does mean is that you would get a really easy way of getting the hose up into the top of the case. So that you could have it going straight up into your graphics cards, for example. This large area here, or should you end up removing the front hard drive bays, which, let's face it, if you excuse me, you could have them right in the front, and you could still put a storage drive up in one of the optical bays and then run solid state drives, which you could have on display for argument's sake. But there's plenty of room towards the front of the case to be able to mount separate pumps and reservoirs should you want. DDC pumps with reservoir tops, for example, would work great in this. So really there is ample room in this to be able to get a decent 360mm radiator in the roof, a full-size 240 in the bottom. Technically, if you wanted to get handy with some tools, you could probably get two 240s in the bottom as well. There is at the front, one thing I hadn't noticed, I do apologise, I will get my words right. One thing I hadn't mentioned, that's the words I was looking for, is that you can get a 120mm fan in the front as well. So you could even be feeding those rads. But yeah, you could get two radiators in the bottom should you wish. You'd have to be get your hands dirty and get in there and be willing to kind of mess about with your hoses and stuff like that. But it is possible, and it could be done pretty well. And then you can have a cross flow idea at the front, so it was going in one radiator into the other radiator and out the other side. So you could easily get those in there and still have that rad in the roof as well. To be perfectly honest with you guys, water cooling wise, this is awesome, to the point of if there was that 60mm radiator support in the top, I would say this was better than the original Cosmos. It's pretty much on par water cooling wise. You just have to tweak things a little bit better, but the fact that you can have hard drives all whiz this out and get those other radiators in is just perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly measure the width here that you would be able to use. And there is a total of 160. So it would be a tight squeeze to get two 60mm rads in there and two sets of fans. But it could be done in the fact that you just have to have the fans on the outside, which would help light up the mesh anyway. So you've got enough room inside the bars for the radiators, and then you just have to have the fans on the outside. And if we go from edge to edge, so that'll include the fan spacing that you could have, there's 200mm there. So you've got more than enough room to get two full-size radiators and two sets of fans on. So one set of fans for one rad, one set of fans for the other rad. I have to admit though, I am massively impressed with this lower section. I know it may only be simple, but the fact that it's actually been thought about. One thing I would say though is it would have been nice if there was a second bracket on this side, so that you know what I mean, natively supported another 240mm rad. But let's face it, we are asking for a lot when it does support one in the first place. So yeah, water cooling wise, ticks the boxes in every way possible that you could want. Air cooling wise, it does pretty much everything that you could want. Hard drive wise, it does everything possible that you could want. Power supply wise, you could easily get the biggest power supply in there and still be able to fit your rads and everything in there and all your cables. And because of that box at the back, it's actually easy to get your power supply in and out, because all you need to do is like pull the cables off and you could just whiz it straight out the back. You wouldn't have to mess around with, you know, the side of the case. Inside the actual main chamber, if we look up, there's ample room for not only an ATX board, oh that's gone really dark because of the lights. There's ample room in there for not only, there we go, an ATX board, but an XL ATX board, the massive G1 Assassin boards, and even the SR2 and the SR3 when released. I can't really think of anything that this case doesn't bring apart from a small form factor, because it's definitely not small. But I think really now it's time for us to break on to the conclusion and try and get this behemoth of a case wrapped up. Right then guys, it's time for the conclusion, and oh my god, what a conclusion I've got for you, because this, right, gold award, not a doubt in my mind, and I mean not a doubt in my mind. I've had a few tiny little quibbles with the case, but that's just because I always try and, if something's not what I view as perfect, or there's something that I think could be ever so slightly changed to make it that little bit better, I will do. That doesn't necessarily mean it takes away from the case at all, but it just means that, you know, maybe something that I would have done slightly differently to have maybe made the package that bit better. But this case delivers so much to so many people, it's unbelievable. Air cooling, do you know what I mean? It's right for air cooling. You've got that 180mm fan in the front. You've got the option of fitting 320mm or 340mm fans in the roof. 120 or 140 in the back. You can, if you really want to bugger about, put two 120mm fans in the side as well. Hard drives in the bottom, two 120mm fans cooling it should you wish, or you can have a 120mm fan intaking from the front as well. Water cooling, 360mm rad in the roof, 240mm in the bottom, both supported out the box. You could get a second 240mm fan in the bottom. You could get a second 240mm fan in the bottom as well if you wanted to, and you were, you know, willing to put a little bit of time in configuring it all and everything. And then because of the separate chambers of the case, that would be a perfect cross flow idea. In one radiator, in the other radiator, out the other side. Absolutely perfect. Room for pumps, ample room for hard drives, room for even the biggest motherboards, ATX, E-ATX, XL ATX, even the massive SR2s and the upcoming SR3 are supported, and with proper grommets as well. It's only really that the SR2 stroke SR3 are going to have slight problems in the back cutout for the back plates, won't be slightly big enough. But I can understand why Cooler Master didn't kind of add that bit bigger, because it wouldn't really have looked right. The Elysium tried it, failed hard, didn't really look right. It was one of the signs that showed that it was a cheap case. This, yeah, okay, it's going to cost 350 quid, but I can honestly say I think it's worth every single penny of it. If you're going to be spending thousands of pounds on the internals for your rig with, you know, whatever you decide to do, 2011 rig, 1155 rig, however you want to go, multiple graphics cards, water cooling, the whole shebang, this case can house and make it all look awesome. If this is the way that I'm reviewing this in 2011 because I've had to get this ready for NDA, and I'm doing it ahead of time to make sure that I had the time to A, do the review justice, and B, make sure that I can actually get drunk at New Year and have a good time and have at least a couple of days to get over with a massive hangover. So this is going to be going live on the 3rd of January. I can honestly say that if this is going to be the first case release of the year, Cooler Master have set the bar monumentally high. And I'm going to be very, very interested to see if there is another case that comes out throughout the whole of 2012 that can actually surpass how epic this thing is. I don't want to sound like a fanboy or anything with it, but so many times, especially recently with the PC industry, there's been a massive amount of hype considering a launch or a product, and we've been let down. The Cosmos 2 has had an immense amount of hype around it, but to be perfectly honest with you, it was well deserved because it has delivered on more things than I was actually probably prepared for. One slight quibble, side window, if you're spending, you know, if you're going to be water cooling and spending loads of money and stuff like that, it would have been nice to have seen a side window in it. It would also be nice to see if they bring one out later on, because I would buy it. And that would be just so that you can see your workmanship, and it would be, in my opinion, because of the design of the door, it would be better for them to bring us a side panel and try and mod one in, because I don't think it could be done nicely, not without being a master craftsman anyway. But one thing I will say is I think Cooler Master have had a bit of a shake-up over the last 6 months to a year, because to be perfectly honest with you, from the Stormtrooper onwards, I know that's been recently, but obviously we've got to consider that these things have to get designed and, do you know what I mean, go through R&D and then go through the tooling manufacturer and all that kind of stuff before they even start to get anywhere near us. But at some point last year, somebody went in Cooler Master and has had a massive big stir of the pot. Whether they've added some ingredients, whether they've removed some ingredients, I don't know. But whatever they've done, they've made a stark change, because Cooler Master, I think, are back to their old epic form again. I think they had a bit of a year or so out, but I think they're back with a vengeance. I gave the Stormtrooper my case of 2011 for a good reason. I don't think there's another case that was released that year that could come anywhere close to delivering what that case did, especially at the price as well. And now Cooler Master straight away afterwards have just brought us another one, like bam, straight in with another epic case with this. It's just like, finally. And this is what happens when a case manufacturer designs their own cases, puts some serious thought into the end user, and kind of really designs and builds a case for an enthusiast. Rather than what can happen where either A, they buy a design from just a manufacturer that just churn out loads of cheap crap, do you know what I mean, always done with a calculator, that kind of stuff, and then manufacturers just end up sticking their label on it. But when people actually sit down and think, all right, who's going to be using this? What are they going to be using? What are they going to want? Are they going to be wanting to spend a lot of money? Are they going to be wanting to keep things cheap? What are they going to be needing? This and the Stormtrooper is what comes out of it. And I honestly think that a lot of other manufacturers out there should be severely worried about this. And I don't want to start kind of harping names out there, but if Cooler Master are back at this kind of level, then there's not very many other manufacturers out there that are really going to have enough time to bring us a case that they're going to end up designing themselves and not relying on some other kind of poor bloke locked up in a room in China somewhere with his calculator and a ruler and trying to work out the prices of this and the prices of that. And, you know, rather than just going out there and going, right, I'm going to make something awesome, a lot of people should be worried. Because a lot of those smaller, kind of lower end brands have got a lot to worry about. And I mean a lot to worry about as well. Even the bigger brands out there, like Colossus brands, you've got to up your game again, because I honestly think Cooler Master are literally back looking for blood. Because, I mean, let's face it, this is what happens when they kind of get left to do what they want. Yeah, I'm monumentally impressed with this. And like I said, first case release of 2012, Cooler Master have set the bar high. And only time is going to tell if they've set it beyond reach or not. But dear God, all those other brands, you have got such a mountain to climb if you want to beat this thing. I think the only way you could make it any better would be fit a side panel window in it and make me a white one. So with that in thought, oh, a white one. I think my trousers have just gone a bit tight. Oh. But with that thought in my mind, and with that disgusting thought in your mind, this is Tiny Tom Logan with what can only be described as the epic, awe-inspiring, do you know what I mean, 100% kind of hype delivering Cooler Master Cosmos 2 review. Out.